Welcome to Watch Symposium. I'm Austin. It's spring in Japan. It's Hanami season. Time to go to the parks, view the cherry blossoms, drink. People aren't doing it as much as they usually do for obvious reasons, but it's that time of year. And I want to talk about the 5-factor model of watch assessment, all right? And that sounds pretty scientific. And when you actually look at it, it seems pretty scientific. But you got to keep in mind that whoever is doing the assessing is going to bring a lot of subjectivity into it. And so it kind of means nothing. Well, you got to factor in who's talking. All right, so what is this 5-factor model? All right, let's go through them. Form and function, that's 1 and 2. Form is how the watch looks. Again, subjective, all right? Function, well, not only the functions it has, but how it functions in your life, what it does, what it doesn't do, where you can wear it, where you can't wear it. That actually rolls over into the 4th factor, and that's usability. And we'll get there, and what you'll find is a lot of these affect one another. There's a lot of crossover, all right? Number 3, value, all right? You got value and value retention, and I suppose you could separate those two and have a 6th, but I kind of like to lump those together. Value and value retention. Is it worth the money? What do you get for your money? Again, subjective, very subjective. And then value retention, which is a part of that. Are you going to keep having your money, all right, when you buy that $1,000 mid-tier watch and you want to get out of it 2 years from now? Are you going to pretty much lose all your money? Or are you going to make a buck? That's a lot of value retention. So that's factor 3. And then factor 4 is usability. And usability is interesting. That's one of my favorite things to talk about because, again, it's very subjective, but a lot of people, I think, conceptualize it as how usable is the watch. Like if it's a Rolex Oyster, it can go in water, and if it's something like an Explorer, you can wear it in many different situations, or a date chest, or an Oyster Perpetual. It can serve as a dress watch, a watch to wear with a suit, or a very casual watch. But that's not the only aspect of usability. We have to take a social view as well. We often bounce the watch off how it will fare in the environment. Water, rain, through your travels. How does it go up against the world? All right, and of course, oysters go up really well because, that's kind of what they're made for. But a watch that has low resistance to water, a leather strap, something you couldn't swim with, you'd say, well, that's not so usable. But again, we got to bring in the social aspect, and that's something I think a lot of people don't do. How does it function, and how usable is it in all aspects of your life, all right? Meaning when you travel, and when you travel to sketchy places. And often people think of usability as this situation or this situation. How does it fare on the beach? How does it fare with a suit? I look at the situation as well, but my situation is life, my life. How does it fare in all of those situations? Am I gonna feel comfortable here in Japan? Probably. I could wear anything here in Japan. So if it's a diamond-studded, gold, blingy, rainbow Daytona, you'll be fine here in Japan. It's not gonna be so usable in third world countries. If you're hiking across Africa, and if you find yourself late at night being driven home by a sketchy tuk-tuk driver, all right? And so usability, you got to take in those social factors, all right? And again, you could say, well, how does it function in those social situations? And again, there's a lot of crossover between usability and function and all of these things. And of course, the value can affect how usable it is. And again, it's subjective. You might say, well, $5,000, $10,000 watch, I got so much money that if somebody wants to take it off me, that's fine. Other people really struggle to buy a watch like that. And so the the value of that watch, well, they might say, well, that's a situation where I couldn't wear the watch, and it makes it sort of untenable and unusable in those certain situations. And so that's something to keep in mind. And then, of course, you've got the X factor, and that's factor number 5, the X factor. How it makes you feel, again, subjective. So some people, Rolex just doesn't do anything for them. I mean, the idea of spending like $1,000 on a Rolex watch, right? You're probably laughing. You're like, $1,000? What kind of watch are we talking about? A lot of people wouldn't even do it. You'd say, wait, look, you can get a no-date sub. I'm going to give you a great price, $1,000. They'd say, I really would rather go shopping. $1,000. I can buy some really cool clothes. That's what turns me on. And so the watch would have no X factor to them. Something like Omega, right? I mean, Omega has a lot of X factor for some people. It just doesn't have it for me. You know, if you gave me a price on a Speedmaster for a couple $100, I'd probably buy it, all right? But even a Speedmaster at the bargain price of $1,000, I just wouldn't do it because it has that little X factor to me. And again, it's very subjective. And so, again, X factor is another really interesting thing. They're all subjective, and as scientific as we want to make it, the 5-factor model of watch assessment, it all comes down to who's doing the assessing. And that's part of the fun, you know, people's take on the model. So we have form, function, value retention, usability, and the X factor. And one watch will really excel in one or some of those and really fail in others. And that's the whole thing. You'll never find a watch that does everything perfectly. In fact, probably the best thing you can do is find a watch that does pretty well in all of those. Pretty well. And let's talk about what that would be. Something like an Explorer 2, all right? Now, I would form, all right, we'll go through these. Form, I'd have to give it to something like no date sub. But the Explorer 2 is pretty good, all right? Pretty good. Function, well, you got your date, you've got your fourth hand. Again, it would be much more functional if it had that rotating bezel, so a GMT Master 2 would be better, but we got to factor in those other factors, all right? What about value? A lot of value there. It's probably one of the cheapest function-rich Rolex watches out there, and that's why you probably wouldn't choose the GMT Master 2, because you have to pay so much more for just that rotating bezel, okay, which is going to make it more functional. So value proposition, I'd probably want to give it to the Explorer 2, but you got to think of value retention, and that's a tough one. I would say they're about equal there, all right? Then you've got usability. Well, I would much rather lose an Explorer 2 than a GMT Master 2. So that's going to make it a little bit more usable. It might fly under the radar a little bit more. So that might make it more usable in sketchy places. Again, you know, usability crosses over with function. It's really nice to have that rotating bezel to mark time with. But again, is the stress of wearing such an expensive GMT Master 2 going to weigh on you to where, yeah, I'll just deal with the fixed metal bezel? And then you got the X factor. And of course, is there a lot of X factor with the Explorer 2? Well, yes and no. I mean, compared to like a GMT Master 2, probably not. Sub, probably not. It's not the most fancy watch. And again, X factor could be, you know, how it makes you feel and how it makes others feel. It's not a very fancy watch, so you're not going to really impress anybody with an Explorer 2. But it's a respectable watch. People see an Explorer 2 on your wrist and they're like, okay, that's a good watch. It's good. It's just a good, honest, probably one of the best, honest, professional model Rolex watches. But, you know, it's not like a really blingy piece. It's not going to get you laid at the strip club, all right? So perhaps you might say it doesn't have the X factor you're looking for. And anyway, there you go, the 5-factor model of watch assessment. In my opinion, best 2 watches for satisfying all of those when it comes to Rolex, the GMT Master 2 and the Explorer 2. But the usability of the Explorer 2 really, for me, makes it kind of pull ahead. And again, that's because I travel and I find myself in situations where I want a watch that doesn't stress me out. But look, if I limited my roaming to Japan, GMT Master 2 all the way. What do you guys think drop a comment in the comment section of this 5-factor model, and what do you think is a watch that does all of it pretty well? Again, I mean, Casio F91W, oh, it really is great value, not a lot of form, no X factor whatsoever, completely usable, value retention, not much, value, a lot of value. So it's really interesting to bounce watches off this, and let me know what you think. Take care, guys. Thanks for watching. Enjoy your spring, and I'll see you next time.